Hi, my name is Steven, and my presentation is on the health impacts of intermittent fasting. So intermittent fasting is a dieting method where you do not eat or drink for several hours on end. Normally it's between 12, it could go up to 16 or even 24 hours on at a time. So there are several effects of intermittent fasting, but probably the most important effects are the chemical effects. During fasting, the cells activate pathways that enhance defensive mechanisms against oxidative and metabolic stress, and those remove and repair damaged molecules. And then during the feeding period, cells engage in tissue-specific processes of growth and plasticity. However, most people who consume 3 meals a day plus snacks, so intermittent fasting obviously does not occur there. During periods of fasting, triglycerides are broken down into fatty acids and glycerol, which are used for energy. The liver converts fatty acids to ketone bodies, which provide a major source of energy for tissues, especially the brain. So once this process right here is happening, the body enters what we call ketosis. And ketosis is pretty much the natural metabolic state in which there's a high concentration of ketones in the blood. And this condition is normally associated with ketogenic diets or very low carb diets. And it also happens during pregnancy, infancy, starvation, and in our case, fasting. And pretty much ketosis kicks in when fat is beginning to provide most of the fuel for the body. And there's a limited amount of glucose, which is the body's preferred source of energy. And of course, you don't have very much glucose if you're not eating while you're fasting. So some of the more physical effects of intermittent fasting are that it slows down the aging process and actually increases our lifespan. Yeah, so a bunch of studies have been done and experiments have been done about the effects of intermittent fasting, and it actually slows down the aging process because of the ability to lose weight and lower blood pressure, and reduce the cholesterol in our body. So pretty much the mitochondria changes shape according to the amount of energy being demanded, and its capability to morph declines with age. However, due to the experiments that were done, a restricted diet can actually help maintain the mitochondria's youthful state. So yeah, that helps increase the chances that you'll live longer because your mitochondria are operating at a more efficient rate and they're not declining in efficiency because you're not aging nearly as fast as you were when you're eating very frequently, because now you're on that fast. And as well as weight loss, because in weight loss, due to fasting, you're burning the fats that you're using for energy instead of the foods that would first go as a source of energy. So intermittent fasting originated based on the thought process that when the insulin levels go low, when you're fasting, your body begins to burn fat as a source of energy because there's no food or carbs or proteins or whatever it is to break down and use those for energy. So your body basically starts burning fat in your body to survive. And this trend of intermittent fasting pretty much started very recently in recent years. So here is the most popular method of intermittent fasting, which is called the 16-8 method. So pretty much you're fasting for 16 days, and then you're given an 8-hour window to eat and drink and pretty much go about your life as normal in those 8 hours. So it's actually recommended that women go a little bit less than this, about 14 to 15 hours. And in that 8-hour period, it's very crucial that you're fitting in everything that you need, such as maybe 2 to 3 meals or even more, to make sure that you're not getting malnourished while participating in the fasting. And the most popular way to actually take this method on would be like to have dinner at 8 o'clock, and then you don't eat anything after that, and then you can go to sleep, wake up, skip breakfast, and then you could have your first meal around noon, and you would satisfy that 16 hours or so, because you're actually sleeping through a majority of what you'd be fasting. Some of the less popular ones are alternate day fasting, which would be you would fast one day and then you would eat normally the next day. You would fast normally and then eat. You would eat normally and then fast the next day, like that. And there's also the 5-2 diet, which is you eat normally for 5 days and then you fast, or you're on the diet for 2 days. So why has intermittent fasting become controversial? So pretty much intermittent fasting became controversial during the big lockdown of COVID-19. So it's actually very, very recent. So the trend kind of blew up because people were stuck at home and they were looking for ways to lose weight. And actually a bunch of ads on like TikTok and this app right here called Simple, which is actually an app completely devoted to intermittent fasting and keeping you honest with it, and helping you incorporate it into your lifestyle. But yeah, models and such have been those to convey that message of intermittent fasting, as well as TikTok being a huge outlet to the social world about intermittent fasting. And TikTok is about 37% teen at this point, which is a lot. So some appeals of fasting are that it supports a healthy lifestyle, where we previously mentioned about the cell function, the way our cells actually are operating at a more efficient rate, and our body is actually a lot more healthier when we're fasting and when our body is burning those fats. And obviously another appeal would be weight loss. Instead of like going to the gym and like lifting weights and doing cardio and all that stuff, you can simply participate in some intermittent fasting and have your body naturally just burn fat. Yeah. And then obviously it slows down the aging process, which is obviously a big appeal. Who wouldn't want to live longer? A study shows that it also increased mindfulness and energy, because burning fat, you actually produce more energy than you do burning carbs. Another appeal is that it reduces a bunch of diseases that can be fatal and are super common in the US, such as obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, asthma, as well as arthritis. So a big thing that is a negative about intermittent fasting, or pretty much fasting in general, is that it can lead to a bunch of unhealthy practices and can actually transition into developing unhealthy eating disorders. So of course, without being properly prepared or properly educated on how to perform some intermittent fasting, there's a good chance that you can suffer with some malnourishment. And obviously, that's not a very good thing when you're not eating, obviously, enough. And then you're taking very long breaks from eating. That can lead to a bunch of bad things, which can also not be very good for us. So why are people choosing to take part in intermittent fasting? A big reason for intermittent fasting being super popular right now was the outbreak of COVID-19, the pandemic, because while we were all at home, we were locked at home. Obviously, we couldn't go out. We were all stuck on our phones, and advertisements obviously hit our phones, and then put this idea at the forefront of our minds about losing weight. And obviously, locked at home, there's a lot of temptations of like eating food and stuff like that. So it was also an easy way to quote unquote stay in shape, because in fasting, your body's able to burn fats naturally, because obviously it's not burning the carbs and foods that you're eating first, it's burning your body's fat. And that's obviously a lot easier than going to the gym, because even if you weren't more of a gym person, gyms were closed anyway. So that was also a way to stay in shape. Some economic and political factors that made controversy. A big economic factor was that saving money. Obviously, if you're eating less, you're buying less food you're buying food less often. So I know food is a big expense, especially nowadays. So saving money is obviously huge, and as well as saving money, obviously you're improving your health at the same time, which is also a plus. And intermittent fasting was also used to prove a point in political means. A quote here states that Chavez knew he was tapping into the history of not eating as a way of speaking truth to political powers. So pretty much in an article here, a man was standing up against higher power in his foreign country. And to pretty much, to cut a long story short, he was trying to prove a point to the greater powers. And his way of doing this was not eating. And yeah. So the controversy related to ethics. The controversy was not very ethical in most cases, because the advertisements were in most cases providing false claims. Like an example of this was a TikTok that claimed that coffee prevented Alzheimer's, which was produced by Simple, which was that app that was completely devoted to intermittent fasting. Simple's reply to a bunch of evidence going against them was that they didn't tell people to fast for 24 hours or even 2 days or 3 days. But a huge thing was their Instagram account admiring a user who had not eaten in just under 3.5 days. And they later went back on what they claimed before and admitted that they maybe had been encouraging unhealthy behavior of their users. And I think that's super important. Here, we can see some efforts that individuals, governments, and local organizations can take. Individuals, I think it's our our duty to educate ourselves and others around us of the dangers of these advertisements, especially if you're uneducated and potentially easily susceptible to believing whatever is being advertised to you. I know TikTok being a hugely popular app that several young kids are on, seeing like their favorite model, maybe it's not even something they sign up for, but them telling them to participate in intermittent fasting, they might just do it and not know how to properly like approach such a thing like that. And that could definitely go down and provide some bad things later on. The director of external affairs at BEAT, which is eating disorders, stated that it is clear that further steps need to be taken to limit the amount of harmful advertising for this kind of media. Yeah, so pretty much individuals should also go to reporting ads like this to make sure that we completely avoid the situation, completely try and take down all these ads to persuade people to go down potentially a wrong path. So some responsibilities that organizations should have. Of course, they have the right to advertise their product and get their product to sell, but they should also take responsibility of the people they could be potentially targeting and potentially harming, such as the young children who could be seeing their ads and just blindly following and just, starving themselves and not really know what they're doing. So a little summary of what we've got so far is intermittent fasting is a dieting method where we don't eat for several hours in hopes of losing weight. And in turn, it actually helps our health. In most cases, people participate in intermittent fasting because they want to lose weight. And it just so happens that improving your health is a nice plus that goes with that. There are several methods that go with this. Three of the big ones are the 6-8 method, where you fast for 6 hours, 16 hours at a time. Then you have an 8-hour window where you can eat and cram all your meals in. The 5-2 method, where you have 5 days of normal eating and 2 days of being on the diet. And then you have the alternating day, where you have 1 day where you fast and another day where you go back to normal, another way where you are on the diet and you go back to normal, like that. And yeah, the popularity around intermittent fasting really sparked during the first outbreak of COVID in the US, at least. And that was as recent as March or April of this past year, which is actually pretty crazy to think about, that was just about a year ago. And the controversy obviously started through advertisements on social media, big ones, especially like TikTok and Instagram. And to further talk about the things we've hit here, I have a video for us.
Intermittent fasting refers to eating plans that alternate between fasting and eating periods. The goal is to systematically starve the body long enough to trigger fat burning. While research is still underway and the method may not be suitable for everyone, there is evidence that, when done correctly, intermittent fasting can help lose weight, lower blood pressure and cholesterol, prevent or control diabetes, and improve brain's health. During a meal, carbohydrates in food are broken down into glucose. Glucose absorbs through the intestinal wall into the bloodstream and is transported to various organs, where it serves as the major energy source. Excess glucose is stored for later use in the liver and adipose tissue in the form of glycogen and fats. In between meals, when the body is in the fasted state, the liver converts glycogen back to glucose to keep supplying the body with energy. Typically, an inactive person takes about 10 to 12 hours to use up the glycogen stores, although someone who exercises may do so in much less time. Once the reserve of glycogen in the liver is depleted, the body taps into energy stores in adipose tissues. This is when fats are broken down into free fatty acids, which are then converted into additional metabolic fuel in the liver. Thus, if the fasted state lasts long enough, the body burns fat for energy and loses that extra fat. Losing the extra fat is translated into a range of associated health benefits. Insulin is the hormone required for driving glucose into cells. Insulin level is regulated to match the amount of glucose in the blood, that is, high after a meal and low between meals. Because insulin is secreted after each meal, eating throughout the day keeps insulin levels high most of the time. Constant high insulin levels may desensitize body tissues, causing insulin insensitivity, the hallmark of prediabetes and diabetes type 2. Fasting helps keep insulin levels low, reducing diabetes risks. Fasting also has beneficial effect on the brain. It challenges the brain the same way physical or cognitive exercise does. It promotes production of neurotrophic factors, which support the growth and survival of neurons. Fasting, however, is not for everyone. Among those who should not attempt fasting are children and teens, pregnant or breastfeeding women, people with eating disorders, diabetes type 1, advanced diabetes, or some other medical problems, people who are underweight or frail. Fasting can also be unsafe if overdone or if not done correctly. There are several approaches to intermittent fasting, but the easiest to achieve is perhaps the one that simply extends the usual nighttime fast. A daily cycle of 16-hour fast followed by an 8-hour eating window is usually sustainable. For intermittent fasting to be safe and effective, it must be combined with balanced meals that provide good nutrition. It is important to stay hydrated and know your physical limits while fasting. The fast must be broken slowly. Overeating after fast, especially of unhealthy foods, must be avoided.
All right. So some concluding thoughts are that there are obviously several health benefits that come with intermittent fasting, and it can definitely be a beneficial way of life that can have a lot of really, really good things that help you out in the long run. But it's also important, like the video said, to make sure that it's performed properly and it's a proper lifestyle for you. Like obviously you can't be a very high caliber athlete or like exceed yourself a lot like through exercise and be a part of this fasting method, because it just wouldn't work out. You would be super depleted. But overall, I think that the trend does check out. I think that there's definitely substance to the attention that intermittent fasting got, and I definitely think it makes sense why it got super popular. So here are my references, and thank you.